Hello, welcome, and tonight we are going to talk about 7 myths you may have heard about tea. Have you ever heard that oolong tea is the best diet tea? Or maybe you've heard that green tea is better than or healthier than black tea. You may have even called an herbal infusion tea. Is it herbal tea? Is that tea? Tonight I'm going to answer these questions and 4 more. I want to get you oriented first. My name's Dina Cataldo and I'm the owner of Sicilian Tea Company, and I'm going to post a couple things in the comment section. One of the things I'm going to post to is a blog, and in that blog it's going to contain the links that I mentioned during this session. And then I'm also going to, hi Travis, I'm also going to link to 5 rookie tea mistakes and how to avoid them. So I want to make sure that you see those links later on and go to the blog and get that free blog bonus, the 5 rookie tea mistakes and how to avoid them. So with that, let's get started. All right, so myth number 1, herbal teas are teas. Is that true? No. Tea is all made of the same plant. It's called Camellia sinensis. And with Camellia sinensis, that can be created into all 6 types of teas that you've been familiar with, or maybe you're just learning about. So you have white tea, green tea, yellow tea, oolongs, blacks, and dark teas. And in the blog notes, you're going to see that there are links that will take you to other broadcasts, to other blogs that will talk a little bit more about that. But herbal infusions are not herbal teas. The only things that are really teas are things made out of Camellia sinensis. So if you're going to call an herbal tea, that's cool because I'm not the tea police. But know that they're either called tisanes or herbal infusions or herbal blends. And if you've got another word for them, you can use that too. Just know it's not technically tea. So the second myth is that making tea right is mysterious and time-consuming. Well, you may be familiar with tea bags, which are the most popular way to consume tea. And yeah, those are super quick ways to consume tea, but you're not making it the healthiest that you can make it. You're not getting all of the healthy antioxidants. You're not getting all of the oils that are being taken out of the whole tea. You're getting little tea particles, also called fannings. I call them tea dust. You're not actually getting the full leaf experience. But it's not hard to get the full leaf experience. It's not hard to get all of those good, yummy, complex flavors and aromas that you can get in whole or partial leaf tea. And you know, if you go into the blog, I'll give you like a quick rule of thumb that you can refer back to. But I do it a pretty simple way, no matter what tea I'm drinking. Maybe blacks I treat a little bit differently. So if it's any tea except maybe black tea or dark teas like pu'er, I use about 2 teaspoons of tea and I put it in this brewing mug. So this is my favorite steeping tool. Put about 2 teaspoons of tea in it, and then I put the brewing mug into a coffee cup or a mug, and then I use off boiling water. So I have a fancy tea kettle that'll put it to like 175 or 185. But if you don't have a fancy tea kettle, boil your water, let it cool down 5 minutes, and then pour your water into your mug and let it steep maybe 2 minutes. Okay? If you like it stronger or maybe a little bit more robust, it's probably going to turn bitter if you leave it in for longer than 2 minutes. But if you like that flavoring, then go ahead and brew it longer. But you don't need to brew it that long. In fact, some teas you only need to leave in for 30 seconds. So depending upon your taste, just brew it less long. It's not really mysterious. It's just a matter of knowing what you like. So for black teas or pu'ers, I boil water. So for a black tea, I'll put maybe 1 or 2 teaspoons of tea, usually 2 teaspoons of tea in the brewing mug. I place it in the mug and I put the boiling water inside. I let it steep maybe 30 seconds to a minute. Either one, just pu'ers really don't need to be steeped that long, and neither do blacks. But If you want to get more infusions, which I highly suggest, because you can get 3, 5, and some teas like 10 times, you can steep your same tea 10 times with increased temperatures and increased steeping times, you're going to get more value, and you're also going to get different kinds of aromas, different kinds of flavors each time you steep that tea. And it's something just to take note of when you're starting to experiment with what you like. So there's not a big mystery about tea. It's just getting comfortable with it. It's just like anything else. The more you practice, the more you steep, the more you get used to what you like and start learning it, you're gonna find that it's super easy. And I really suggest just playing around, getting a bunch of different teas and just playing, seeing what you like. Follow the instructions on the packaging at first, play with it a little bit from there, okay? All right, so myth number 3. Ooh, that was funny to me. Tea in tea bags is just as good as loose leaf tea. So there's 2 parts to this myth, okay? First off, most of the time when you think of tea bags and the tea inside of them, you're likely thinking about the tea particles. At least I do when I talk about tea bags. They are getting higher quality tea in tea bags, but we'll talk about that in the second part of this myth. So the first part is tea bags, usually they contain the tea fannings or the tea dust that I just talked about, which is the lowest grade tea. You aren't going to be able to re-steep them and get very much flavor from them. The flavors from that initial steeping aren't going to be very complex because they've already lost a lot of the oils that give you those natural aromas. So it's just not as good and as just loose leaf tea. Now there's also these pyramids. You might have seen these sachets that have loose leaf tea that are whole and partial leaf tea. Higher quality tea in a nice bag. There's a couple things that I take issue with the pyramid bags though, is they don't always allow the leaf to expand fully. So I have this little example here, and I'm hoping you can see this. So you can get a sachet with these tea leaves, right? This one happens to be a milk oolong, and it's been rolled in the tea processing, and there's going to be a link in the blog that is going to talk to you about tea processing if that's something you're interested in. But these small tea leaves are going to expand, and that pyramid isn't going to allow them to expand as fully as they may need to. So this is that same milk oolong leaf that has been steeped. It needs room to expand in order to get all of those flavors out of it. And when you put a bunch of leaves in a tea sachet or you put them in a smaller tea bag, they're not going to have the room to expand. And what that means is they're not going to be able to release all of their natural oils, so you're not going to get all of the health benefits, and you may not be getting all of the flavors that you can get out of them. It depends on the tea. You'll know when you see it if the tea bag just doesn't seem to be expanding the way that it should be for that leaf. It's different for every single kind of tea. But there's another part of this that I'm not a big fan of. So the old school paper bags tea, they would have staples in them, they'll have strings, and I'm not a big fan of putting additional waste into the environment, like putting more staples in the environment, putting more things that aren't going to decompose naturally. The old school paper tea bags were oftentimes bleached, so that's something that you want to look out for. Some places may actually say on the box whether or not they're bleached. Not something that I'm a big fan of putting into the environment. The other bags that you might see are the pyramid bags, and those are made out of, I guess, I don't know if it's considered corn plastic. It's actually like, it's called silk, but it's not silk. In order to decompose those bags, you actually have to take them to a professional composting facility. It was a really big disappointment when I learned of this because I garden and I want to put as much as I can into the garden so that it can decompose naturally, so it's providing nutrients to the soil. There's not many people who have time to drop off packaging at a professional composting facility. I don't know anyone who does, and I know the one that's closest to me is about 5 miles away. So there's a lot of easy ways to brew tea without adding those unnecessary additives to the environment that aren't going to easily decompose. So that is myth number 3. So myth number 4, green tea is better than black tea. Have you heard this one? So like I said before, there's 6 kinds of tea. There's white tea, green tea, yellow tea, oolongs, blacks, and dark teas, which include pu'ers. And each of those teas are grown in their own unique way. It's a lot like wine, right? So grapes are grown in different environments with different soil conditions and in different areas of the world. All wine comes from grapes, but not all wines taste the same. Same thing goes for tea. All tea comes from these tea plants, but not all tea plants are created the same. Not all grow in the same environment or the same soil conditions. And so each tea leaf is going to have different properties. So when we're talking about whether or not a tea leaf, like one that's meant to become green tea versus a tea leaf that's meant to become black tea, whether one is better than the other, that's really not helpful to talk that way. And I feel like because these tea leaves themselves all contain these different health benefits, then when they're produced according to these different methods to create all of these 6 different types of teas, they evolve and they have all of these different good things inside of them, but they're all different. And there's different amounts of different antioxidants, whether we're talking about green tea or black tea. And if you're really schooled in all the antioxidants, there's different kinds. So to talk about green tea being healthier than black tea, to me, that's just not quite making sense. All tea is beneficial in one way or another. You may look at a white tea as being less processed. Again, in the links below, you're going to see a referral to the blog about tea processing. White tea may be less processed than a black tea, which means it has a higher content of antioxidants, but the difference is so minuscule that it's not extremely helpful to talk about the health benefits of tea in that way. So there was something that I had heard that Antonio Banderas had said about white tea, and specifically he drinks silver needle tea, which is a high-end white tea. And he says he drinks a gallon of it every morning and calls it something like it's the elixir of life. It's not the fountain of youth. I love you, Antonio. I really do. It's not the fountain of youth, but it is very healthy, just like any other tea is very healthy, especially if you were replacing a not so healthy drink with tea. That is a big key, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Let's talk about myth number 5. Is oolong tea a diet tea? You may have heard about diet tea, all these detox type teas, and I want to tell you, I wish this were true, but it's just not. I did a little bit of research regarding the oolong teas just to see, okay, what is the reasoning for oolongs being touted as this diet tea? It turns out a really bright marketer has figured out the magic language to get people to drink oolong tea, because there was a study that was done, I don't know, about 10 years ago, and it had participants that drank oolong tea, however, and lost weight. However, what they didn't mention was not only was that oolong tea replacing a sugary drink that was normally in their diet, those participants also changed their diet to be healthier and began exercising. So it wasn't oolong tea as a magic ingredient, it was a part of a larger regimen that anyone could do. So if you and I decided to stop drinking, Coca-Cola and started to exchange our hamburgers for a salad and started taking, mile-long runs when we didn't before, we're going to lose weight. And that's something that unfortunately isn't brought up when people start talking about oolong tea as a diet tea. Simply not so. I wish it were. Another myth is number 6, which is drinking more tea, does it decrease your cancer risk? I was diagnosed with breast cancer at 29 years old. So I started doing a lot of research about this, and I was already a big fan of tea. So boy, when I heard that there had been studies that, showed promise that it would decrease your risk of cancer or fight cancer if you drank more tea, I was all game. I was reading up on that, and unfortunately, it's just not so, at least not yet. They just don't have that much information on it. The tea that has been studied most is green tea, which is why you hear green tea touted as such a wonderful tea. But I think it's the National Cancer Institute, they say, look, the information that we have is inconclusive. We just don't have enough information to say that tea fights cancer. So I wish it were so, but it's not so yet. We just don't have the research to prove it up yet, okay? All right, so this is my favorite, myth number 7, okay? And this is near and dear to my heart because I feel that, so many of us, me especially, I think sometimes, I don't know, I feel like personally I don't give myself enough time. And I know that this is true for a lot of other people because when I talk to, clients who have purchased from me or people who have participated in my 21-day tea ritual challenge, they say, you know what, I just don't take enough time for myself. I don't, put the focus on me. So what am I talking about here? Myth number 7 is tea is all about the antioxidants. Well, that's not so. A big part of tea, and the reason that I love it, is the opportunity to create a ritual surrounding it. It's the opportunity to create a bit of time, a bit of space for yourself. So a couple things that I like to talk about. The Mayo Clinic found that chronic stress increases our risk of getting diseases like cancer. So if you are concerned about your cancer risk or heart disease risk or decreasing your risk of getting any other kind of disease, the first thing to really look at is managing your stress. Now, our bodies release these hormones when we're stressed, right? And that's natural. I mean, that fight or flight mentality, you've probably heard about that, right? You feel the adrenaline rush. And it's natural when it happens in a rush, and then it naturally decreases. However, some of our lifestyle choices have created a situation where we are in chronic fight or flight mode. So we are constantly adding to those hormones in our body by being stressed chronically. For instance, if you have a big workload, if you are taking on a lot of new projects and you're not making time for yourself, you are increasing the hormones in your body, increasing that stress level, and that's what leads to those diseases, the cancer, the heart disease, all of that. So one thing that I really believe in is taking time for ourselves, and creating a tea ritual really helps. So second, think about those health benefits and the benefits of just sitting quietly for a few minutes a day. There was actually a Harvard University study in which participants meditated, and they meditated 30 minutes a day for 8 weeks. So I'm not suggesting that you have to suddenly start doing this, but they did it in that way so that they could see whether or not meditation actually had an effect on people's bodies. They discovered that the meditation, that taking time to sit quietly, increased the gray matter in their brains, which are the areas of the brains that are particularly relevant for learning and memory. So imagine what you could do if you could just take 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day consistently and just observe how you feel, because it's going to decrease your stress levels and it's going to affect your health in a positive way. And that's why I feel like tea is so beneficial. So those are the 7 myths about tea, and I hope that you have enjoyed them. Well, hello, Jennifer Bubness, and hello, Sonia. Very nice seeing you tonight. Thanks for stopping by. So I want to give you a couple links in the bottom. So in a couple minutes, I'm going to link down below And they're going to have a link to the show notes, which is going to take you to links to the 6 types of tea that we talked about, as well as the 5 rookie tea mistakes and how to avoid them. I want you to take a look at that. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them down in the comments below and I will reply to you. So a couple things to do now. First, like this video if you haven't already, and get your free 5 rookie tea mistakes. All right? Thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.